Good afternoon. At the top, I have one thing for you, and then I'll turn it over to all of you. We condemn in the strongest terms today's attack by unknown assailants on a United Nations mission in South Sudan convoy carrying peacekeepers and civilians in the state of Jonglei, which resulted in the deaths of 5 Indian soldiers and at least 7 civilians, and injuries to several more unmissed personnel. We convey our sympathies to the families and friends of those killed and injured in the attacks, to UNMISS and the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, as well as to the Government of India. As you know, India has long been a leading supporter of UN peacekeeping operations, a fact we recognize and applaud. We call on the government of South Sudan to conduct a full investigation and ensure the perpetrators are brought swiftly to justice. We urge restraint among the affected communities of the region. We reiterate our strong support for UNMISS, which continues to carry out its mandate with admirable determination and dedication. And we refer you to the United Nations for additional details on the attack. So having said that, Matt, I will turn it over to all of you.
Can we start with Cuba?
Okay.
I got 2 different things, but we'll start with the more pressing one,
Yep.
which is, what, if anything, is the State Department's role in dealing with this abduction?
Yep. Thanks for the question, Matt. This is, I think you're referring to a specific family.
Yes.
So we are aware of this case, and the U.S. Interest Section is in contact with local authorities. U.S. officials are providing all appropriate assistance to the family. Because of privacy reasons, we are unable to provide additional information about this specific family. But what I do want to say more broadly speaking is that one of the department's highest priorities is the welfare of U.S. citizens overseas, and this is particularly true for children who are our most vulnerable citizens. So we work closely with legal guardians and both foreign and U.S. authorities to resolve these cases on a consistent basis when they arise.
Have you ever worked with the Cubans on, quite apart from the Elian Gonzalez case, which was the other way around, do you work with the Cubans on that? Is there a history of cooperation there? Is there an agreement on child abduction that you have with the Cubans?
I'm not aware of prior engagement, other than to say that our U.S. Interest Section is engaging, and we work closely with both legal guardians and foreign governments, and in this case, Cuba is the government, so we're working with them.
Yeah, but is there a framework, a kind of an agreed framework between the U.S. and Cuba? I mean, I know that there are treaties and other less formal arrangements with other countries on child abduction.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing with Cuba?
Our understanding is that there's not a specific agreement, nor are the Cubans members of the Hague Convention. We have urged all countries to join the Hague Convention, which provides a framework to work through these cases. In countries where there is not a framework, or where they're not members of the convention, or there's not a specific bilateral framework, we work with the government on a case-by-case basis and try to work through the issues, and that would include the Cubans.
And when you say that the interest section is engaging, who is it engaging with?
Again, in touch with family members and in touch with the local government. I don't know particularly which ministry in Cuba would have jurisdiction here. I'm not aware of how their family court system.
Engaging with the family there, or with people back in the States?
Right. I mean, the idea is that.
I mean, has someone from the interest section gone to the marina where this boat is?
My understanding is that the interest section is engaging with the host government authorities about the issue to clarify, and so we work through these issues on that basis.
And then I have an unrelated Cuba question.
Okay.
If anyone wants to
Why don't we go ahead with that?
This case, they can go ahead. No?
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
All right, and I just want to, following up on the question from yesterday about this Jay-Z Beyonce thing.
Yep.
It is correct that the State Department had nothing to do with this at all. Is that right?
That's correct. This was a Department of Treasury matter.
I know, but there wasn't any involvement by does Treasury, quite apart from the specific case, does Treasury get in touch with you guys to determine whether issuing a license would be, to get your input on whether they should issue a license?
My understanding is this is fully in the Treasury Department's jurisdiction on OFAC licenses. Okay. Saeed?
Can we change topic?
Okay.
Yes, I go to the Secretary's trip. Yesterday, our colleague, Mr. Brad Clapper, asked the Secretary about 2 things. The progress that was cited by the Secretary earlier in the day made with Mr. Netanyahu, and when he was coming back. Regarding coming back, he said after we have done our homework. And on progress, he kept it quite, unclear. Could you share with us, first, what is meant by doing the homework? And second, what kind of progress did he make with the Prime Minister?
Well, Saeed, to disappoint you again, the secretary spoke very clearly to this. He had a press availability before departing Tel Aviv where he spoke at length about this. We've put out the transcript and the videos available, so I really don't have anything to add beyond the secretary's sort of comprehensive press conference already this morning.
Patrick, that's the point. It was not very clear. I mean, it says he spent 2-3 days talking to them. I mean, they must have talked about a great deal. I mean, was he able to, let's say, convince the Israelis that the demand or the condition of the Palestinians recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, was he able to do that? I mean, was he able to mitigate their intense demand and so on?
Saeed, the secretary was quite clear in that press avail himself that it's not helpful to the process to be reading out those kind of details, so that's not what we're going to be doing.
Okay, what about the homework? What kind of homework is he talking about?
Again, we're not going to be getting into the details. We're going to continue the process. You know the secretary's personal commitment to the issue. Over here.
Secretary Kerry talked about an economic initiative for the West Bank. Do you have any details on that?
And again, he said he'd be clarifying and providing more information on that going forward when we have more to roll out about specific initiatives.
Do you
Michelle.
have any details about his meetings with the Syrian opposition in London?
Just to say, Michelle, that details are still being worked on that, but the secretary, as he announced, does look forward to meeting with some of the Syrian opposition in London later this week to further explore ways to impact Assad's calculation, and he'll be joined in London by Ambassador Ford. But in terms of the details of who all he might meet with, that's still being worked through right now.
Will it be a trilateral meeting? That means French, British, and American foreign ministers will be meeting with the opposition?
I don't have specific details on exactly how the secretary's schedule will go, whether there'll be sort of a bilateral scenario or whether Foreign Minister Haig will be hosting other meetings. I really refer to the traveling party.
Just on Syria, do you have anything to say about the announcement today by al-Nusra and al-Qaeda in Iraq that they are merging?
Well, Matt, you know that the link between al-Qaeda in Iraq and the al-Nusra Front in Syria was well known before this announcement, but AQI's public claim of ownership of the Nusra Front validates what we've long known, that the Nusra Front is the Syrian arm of AQI, of the AQI franchise. So, we've long made clear our serious concerns with respect to the threat of violent extremists, including the al-Nusra Front, which we designated back in December. And in that designation, I'll just point out, so that everybody was clear, that AQI was an alias of al-Nusra. We wanted to make that explicitly clear to everyone in Syria.
The other way around. Right?
Sorry, that when we amended the FTO designation of al-Qaeda in Iraq, it included the alias of the al-Nusra Front. Sorry, thanks for clarifying that. And so part of the reason to do that was to make explicitly clear to everyone who these folks are, and AQI has done that explicitly today. Saeed.
There was a number of attacks today, mortar attacks, which are the trademark of Al-Qaeda. That's what they did in Baghdad and in Iraq and so on. And they target civilians. Are you concerned that these groups that seem to multiply every day now just basically at random picking targets and hitting it under the pretext that they are hitting government institutions?
Well, Saeed, you've long heard us talk about our concerns with regard to extremist elements, and we continue to emphasize that perpetrators on all sides must be held accountable.
Mm-hmm. Is that, related to this, your training that you are doing now with the Jordanians of, let's say, the Free Syrian Army, is it designed to sort of offset the proliferation of these militant Islamic groups?
Saeed, look, I'm not going to engage on any specific engagement one way or another, other than to say that everything we're doing is to help empower the moderate opposition and marginalize these extremists who have a very different vision of the future of Syria and who are doing nothing to promote a free, fair, secure, safe, democratic Syria, which we're looking for.
Have anything to say at all about the North Korea's latest?
On
Yep. Go ahead, Michelle.
Will this announcement affect American aids to the Syrian opposition or to the Syrians?
We've already been doing very careful vetting and everything we can to keep any of our assistance away from these extremists. So we already designated them, and it doesn't change that. It just lays bare what we already knew, that these groups are, in fact, one indeed the same.
What do you think of the statement the Free Syrian Army put regarding the committing to a democratic future against al-Nusra?
I hadn't seen the specific statement. Over time, they've made a number of very explicit and statements that we applaud that help make clear that this is not the kind of future for Syria that they seek. And so we applaud those. And again, I haven't seen the specific one, but we're encouraged when the Free Syrian Army makes clear that this is not the future that they're seeking. Emil?
Free Army, Syrian Army distancing itself from al-Nusra open any other door for military, non-lethal?
Emil, you know we've been doing everything. We've been analyzing all options and weighing them against whether it will do more benefit than harm to the Syrian people. Matt?
Just want to go to Korea.
Yep.
Korean Peninsula.
Yep.
What do you make, if anything, of the North's latest attempt at fear-mongering by telling people that they might want to leave South, or that they should leave the South? This is a little bit further than telling embassies that they can't guarantee their safety after Wednesday. This is actually seems to be an attempt to disrupt the South Korean economy.
Yep. Thanks, Matt, for the question. Just to reiterate, and this is what we said back in our U.S. Embassy Seoul message back on April 4th. In our message, we reiterated to U.S. citizens that there's no specific information to suggest imminent threat to U.S. citizens or facilities in the Republic of Korea. So the U.S. Embassy has not changed its security posture. We have not recommended that U.S. citizens who reside in or plan to visit the Republic of Korea take special security precautions at this time. So, North Korea's, reported advice, quote unquote, to foreigners that they depart South Korea only serves to unnecessarily and provocatively escalate tensions.
So you don't, the fact that a nuclear-armed country has told foreigners to get out of South Korea because of a coming war, you don't regard as a specific threat?
Matt, well, you well know that they have a pattern of this provocative
Well,
rhetoric.
exactly. So you don't think that that's credible. You think that it's just bluster.
I mean, again, we were
Because-
Go ahead.
Because if in another circumstance, if a country warned Americans or any other foreigners that to get out, you might think that was an actual threat. No.
Well, look, we've been very clear as over these past couple of weeks as these sort of provocative statements have come out on a routine basis that, of course, we're taking all appropriate measures and we always review our security precautions and we always we're very much capable of defending ourselves and our ally. But in terms of this specific statement today, our analysis remains the same as it was last week, that we're not discouraging U.S. citizens from traveling to South Korea or encouraging them to take any special travel
And you don't
precautions.
think that might be irresponsible in light of the situation?
Well, if we thought otherwise, we'd have a different recommendation, but that's our recommendation.
So your recommendation to American citizens in Seoul or anywhere in South Korea is nothing's going on. Don't worry about it. There isn't any threat, even though a country with nuclear weapons and a huge standing army right on the border, about 40 minutes away from the capital, is threatening war.
Look, we're clear-eyed about the threat, but at this time, we're not
Okay,
recommending.
You just don't buy it.
We're not recommending any specific actions by American citizens at this time. Camille, go ahead.
Can you update us on any contacts that you guys have had with South Korean officials or with Chinese officials about North Korea?
Are you something in specific you're looking for?
No, I just wondered, have there been any new contacts, in the last 24 hours about?
I mean, we're in constant contact through our embassies with both the Chinese, the South Koreans, the Japanese, and others. And the Secretary indeed will be there later going into this weekend. So we'll have a chance to continue to have a conversation about this.
Hi, Patrick. Actually, North Korea usually gives an informal notice to the United States before its missile launch. So did you receive such a notice as of today?
I don't have anything to read out in terms of communications between the DPRK and us at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and
Nicola.
contact with the North Koreans through your so-called New York channel at the UN?
Well, we have a channel communications. I don't have anything specifically to read out about that, but the channel remains open as necessary.
Okay, this question, because yesterday there was a story in the Washington Post saying that this channel doesn't work anymore. It's not closed, but it doesn't work properly.
It's open, but I don't think I'm going to characterize it further than that in this forum. In the back?
Yes. If a U.S. approaching talk with North Korea, except six-party talk, what kind of alternative system United have talk with future talk with North Korea, because of many kind of party talks is not work. I think six-party work, talks working is incredibly is nothing. So.
Well, the bottom line is that the onus remains on North Korea to take meaningful steps toward denuclearization. We are open and committed to authentic and credible negotiations to implement their previous commitments, including irreversible steps that lead to denuclearization. But while we're long said that we're open to these improved relations with the DPRK, it's got to live up to its international obligations and commitments.
So are you still think of through the six-party talk it work with the North Korea negotiations?
I mean, that's been one mechanism that we've engaged on this process, but they need to start living up to their recommendations and choose a different path. Saeed?
Iraq.
Okay.
Yes, Patrick, today marks the 10th anniversary for the fall of Baghdad. And here we are 10 years later. The city is divided. It's basically ethnically cleansed, has no services, no security, bombings everywhere. Could you reflect on the past 10 years and what kind of lessons could be drawn, let's say, as we look into what might happen in Iran and Syria?
Look, Saeed, we talked about this last month when we were at the 10-year mark from the beginning of the war, and I'll just say that we'll leave the retrospective to historians. Here's where we are now. We have a here's where we are now. We have a strategic framework agreement with the Iraqis that governs our relationship, and it's a wide and broad relationship that includes cooperation on economic, political, cultural, in a number of areas. And so we continue to be engaged with our Iraqi partners, and there's still many complex challenges, but we'll continue to engage with our partners on the path forward.
Today, in his article in the Washington Post, his op-ed, Prime Minister Nouri Maliki suggests that you are on solid grounds, your alliance is really very strong and solid, and there is tremendous potential for partnership and business. Do you agree with him? Do you concur that relations are excellent with Iraq?
Well, we read his op-ed with great interest, and we share his commitment and that of the vast majority of Iraqis to a strong bilateral relationship as outlined in the Strategic Framework Agreement. Go ahead.
Mr. Barzani, the president of the Kurdistan region in Iraq, was quoted yesterday as saying that relation with Maliki has reached the non-return point. That means something, big coming up. Are you in touch with the Kurd and Maliki with respect to their deteriorating relationship?
Well, one of the focuses of our diplomacy is trying to improve that relationship and make sure that Iraqis of all different stripes and affiliations are working through the political process and improving their collaboration, working together through the political process. And so that is a focus of our
But are you concerned about what he's saying, the point of no return?
We've made very clear that we think that these issues need to continue to work through in a diplomatic way in the political sphere, and we'll continue to do what we can through our mission and from here in Washington to help facilitate an improvement in those relations. Samir, or was it Michelle? You've been patient.
In his op-ed, Prime Minister Maliki has said that the United States has not lost Iraq. Instead, in Iraq, the United States has found a partner of our shared strategic concerns and our common efforts on energy, economics, and peace and democracy. Do you agree with that?
We do. It was a good op-ed, and it had. Yes, this is a very.
Much of it was written by the embassy.
No, this was the Prime Minister's signature.
The U.S. government had no input into Prime Minister Maliki's op-ed, which extols the wonderful virtues of everything that has happened since the.
We were not involved in his op-ed at all, and it very much was his expression.
It was just a coincidence that you guys agree on absolutely everything.
Look, I'll let the Iraqi side can clarify their message, but I think it was very much here, 10 years later, a way for the Iraqi government and Iraqi people to make clear that there's still very important collaboration going on between our two countries, and we want to see that continue, so we're positively encouraged by it.
But why do you think he said that the United States has not lost Iraq?
I think what the Prime Minister is trying to do is really emphasize how important the Strategic Framework Agreement is and the cooperation we can have on all these issues going forward. Said one more.
Mr. Maliki is not listening to anyone. I mean, look at the executions. The death penalty is just getting out of control. in Iraq. In the last week alone, something like 10 people were executed, and there are dozens more that are just waiting in line. Do you raise at least this issue with them?
Which specific issue? What was the question?
The issue of the death penalty and executions, and basically they are, many of them, they are only guilty of belonging to this sect or that sect.
I'd have to look into seeing what contacts we may have raised human rights concerns. Camille, go ahead.
Just a random question. Former UN employee James Wasserstrom has asked the U.S. to withhold UN funding in accordance with U.S. law because he says he was retaliated against as a whistleblower for exposing corruption at the U.S. mission in Kosovo. What's your reaction to his request?
Just to say that this is an employee speaking in his private capacity. He's not speaking for the U.S. government. I understand this has to do with his prior employment. I'll have to, after the briefing, look and see if I can get you some more information about UN whistleblowers. I do have some more information. I don't have it here with me today.
Okay, are you guys satisfied with the UN's, I guess, their policy about how they treat whistleblowers? I mean,
we've worked consistently with the UN and through our Ambassador for Management and Reform up at our U.S. mission on many of these issues. Let me get some of the language for you after the briefing. Go ahead, one more.
Patrick,
yep.
Turkey and Cyprus. The Foreign Minister of Turkey said on Sunday that he discussed the Cyprus problem with the Secretary. Can you give us a readout of what they said on Cyprus, please?
I don't have a specific readout, just to say that, and you know where we are on Cyprus, and our efforts, we support the efforts under the auspices of the UN Good Offices to reunify the island as a bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. But in terms of a meeting readout, I don't have anything for you further.
Can I ask, please, Mr. Davutoglu sent a letter to the Secretary. He sent the same letter to many other foreign ministers in Europe. In this letter, he's talking about the partition of Cyprus. What is the American position on this proposal?
I mean, I just said what our position is on Cyprus. We support efforts to reunify the island as a bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. We've received the letter, but I'm stating very clearly here what our position is.
Do you have any comment on the earthquake and on the number of casualties, or if you are doing anything to aid the Iranians?
We have seen the reports of an earthquake and are monitoring the situation. We understand this was near Bashir. We refer you to the IEA for further comment. I think they put out a statement already, given that there was part of Iran's nuclear program is near there. But our understanding is that we do send our condolences to those who lost loved ones, and we understand there are some casualties.
Are you concerned about, let's say, possible radiation or possible?
I really refer to the IEA. I think they've already made a clarification on that.
President Ahmadinejad has said today that Iran has become a nuclear state, and he stressed that no one can stop Iran's peaceful nuclear wheel. Do you have any reaction to that?
Just to say that Iran often uses its National Nuclear Technology Day to tout advances, and this is something we've seen sort of this bluster in the past. So, we think this is provocative and not constructive, but it's something that we have seen in past years where they use this anniversary date in this fashion. Yep. Go ahead, Matt.
Did you aware that a Russian journalist who was really savagely beaten up several years ago passed away? Mr. Beketov died yesterday.
We are, and we sadly note the passing of Russian journalist Beketov, Mikhail Beketov. We express our condolences to his loved ones for their loss, as well as to all Russians for the loss of this advocate for clean government and press freedom. He stood out among journalists, taking on local corruption, upholding the freedom of expression, refusing to back down even in the face of threats to his personal security. So we do mourn his loss.
Are you concerned at all that no one has ever been arrested for his, or at least no one has ever been punished for for beating him up?
Matt, we are concerned, and we are urging redoubled efforts to identify and prosecute those responsible for the beating of this respected journalist.
I have one more on Egypt.
Okay.
Pope Tawadros has criticized the performance of the Egyptian president today in dealing with the violence in recent days. He said that President Morsi promised to protect the cathedral but not implemented what he promised, and described his behavior as negligence and poor judgment. Do you agree with him?
Well, thanks for the question, Michelle. We have seen statements from both President Morsi and Pope Tadros regarding the incident. Our understanding is that eyewitness accounts differ about exactly what instigated the violence. That said, the security forces have a responsibility to protect and prevent clashes among citizens, use maximum restraint, and to protect institutions from attacks. So we understand that President Morsi has already promised to conduct a full and transparent investigation. We urge the government of Egypt to implement this promise expeditiously and to make public its findings, including claims of inappropriate or excessive action on the part of the security forces. The failure to prosecute perpetrators of sectarian crimes has contributed to an environment of impunity in Egypt, and so we are concerned.
But the Pope has said that President Morsi has promised him to protect the cathedral, but he didn't implement his promise.
Well, my understanding is this event is under investigation, and we're going to continue to urge the...
Another promise.
Again, we're going to be monitoring this closely. You heard what I said yesterday about our condemnation of sectarian violence and our concern, and it's something that we'll be raising with our Egyptian counterparts.
Thank you.
Thank you.